Planning Profile Setup. The Planning Profile Setup section will focus on troops, inter, and intra-mission movements. Troops, inter, and intra-mission movements. This section will help you understand how to create and save planning profiles in TM, as well as identify the correct planning profile setup for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements. In order to plan transportation for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements, planners will have to first create and save the planning profiles in TM. Planning profiles are necessary in order to ensure the freight units linked to forwarding orders are displayed when accessing the transportation cockpit. Planning profiles only need to be created once. To create the planning profile for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements, access the Planning tab. Under the Planning section, click on the Transportation Cockpit hyperlink to access the planning profile. Click on New. There are 6 different planning profiles for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements. To create the planning profile for troops, for an inter DAP Incoterm, land transportation, and sea transportation, add the description Inter DAP Land and Sea. Select under the Freight Unit section the ZSEL-FU COE Troops Intermission LOA. From the Freight Order section, select ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA. Under the Planning Profile, select ZPLN Troops Land and Sea. And from the Transportation Cockpit layout, always select the UN map layout. To create the planning profile for troops, inter-mission movements, for DAP Incoterms, air transportation, add the description Inter DAP Troops Air. Select under the Freight Unit section the ZSEL-FU COE Troops Intermission LOA. Under the Freight Order Selection Profile, choose ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA. From the Planning Profile, select ZPLN COE Troops, and from the Transportation Cockpit layout, select the UN map layout. To create the planning profile for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements with an XWorks Incoterm for land and sea, add a description Inter and Intra XWorks Land and Sea. Select under the Freight Unit section ZSEL-FU COE Troops Non-LOA. Under the Freight Order section, select ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA. Under the planning profile, you choose ZPLN Troops Land SEA. And under the Transportation Cockpit layout, select the UN map layout. To create the planning profile for troops, inter, and intra-mission movements with an XWorks Incoterm for troops air, add the description Inter and Intra XWorks Troops Air. Select under Freight Unit the option ZSEL-FU COE Troops Non-LOA. Under the Freight Order section, ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA. Under Planning Profile, choose ZPLN COE Troops. And under the Transportation Cockpit layout, select the UN map layout. Now, to create the planning profile for troops, intra-mission movements with DAP Incoterm for land and sea, add a description, Intra DAP Land and Sea. Select under the Freight Unit section ZSEL-FU COE Troops Intra-Mission LOA. Select the Freight Order option ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA. And under the Planning Profile, add ZPLN Troops Land Sea. Select the Transportation Cockpit layout, UN map layout. And finally, to create the planning profile for troops, intra-mission movement with a DAP Incoterm for air, add a description, Intra DAP Air. Select under the Freight Unit section the option ZSEL-FU COE Troops Intra-Mission LOA. Select under the Freight Order Selection Profile the option ZSEL-FO COE Troops Non-LOA, and under the Planning Profile the option ZPLN COE Troops, and finally the Transportation Cockpit Layout option UN Map Layout. Now that the planning profiles are created, click on Save. To access a specific planning profile, select it and click on Continue. Now, once in the Transportation Cockpit, all freight units linked to the planning profile selected will display. Once the planning profile has been set, the process to generate transportation proposals is as it's always been. Simply click on Continue, and once you're in the Transportation Cockpit, you would select the freight unit you want to generate transportation proposals for and click on Transportation Proposals. The system will generate 20 transportation proposals to choose from, and once you accept the planning, you will automatically generate the freight orders required. Simply select the transportation proposal that suits your needs and click on Accept Planning. This action will automatically generate the freight order proposal. Simply click on Save, and once it has generated the freight order number, you can access the freight order in order to view the SOW document. The SOW document can be found in the freight order under the tab Output Management. Simply select the SOW form and click on Document Preview. All the details in the SOW will reflect all the data added to the Excel upload file. All the information you can see and download as well in a Word document or PDF will reflect all the data that you have added to the Excel upload file. The following link will provide access to all the Troops, Inter, and Intra mission movement tutorials. You will also find the following link to access the Transportation Management reference materials. Here you will find the TM User Guide. Thank you for watching this video tutorial.